There are tears in my eyes because I've laughed so much in the last couple of minutes, more than I've laughed in quite a long time. The Visiting Lecher is absolutely fantastic. This is the 22nd and final episode of the 7th season of Cheers. This is directed, of course, by the wonderful James Burrows, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the events of the episode chronologically and share some thoughts. And I guess I have quite a lot of thoughts. Most of my thoughts are in the final scene. The final scene is quite long, and it's perfect. It's absolutely fantastic. We'll get there in a little bit. It starts off with a really great cold open. Cliff comes into the bar, and Carla greets him, "Good evening, Mr. Clavin. How lovely to see you again." What? Cliff responds, quite understandably, "It's a trick, isn't it? You're going to hurt me." And Norm points out that Carla had been acting quite strange, i.e. nice, all evening. And it turns out she'd been to see her palmist, and she'd said that Carla's courtesy to others would result in her good fortune. So she figures the nicer she is to other people, the more fortune she's going to receive. And being nice to Clavin, to Cliff, is obviously a big deal. And she gives him his beer, and Cliff's face just lights up. And it's so lovely, and he beams at Norm, and Norm gives him this smile and a nod, and it's a delightful way to start things off. We then have one main narrative. Frasier comes in, he's meeting Dr. Lawrence Crandell. He has written this book about marriage, and, well, Frasier's jealous of his success, which is quite interesting to look back on, given what happens with Frasier's career. Also, just as an aside, this will be outdated pretty quickly, but I learned today we found out that the Frasier reboot isn't being picked up for a third season, which sucks. Maybe somewhere else will pick it up if Paramount don't want it, but I just wanted to take a second to acknowledge that. Back to the episode, Dr. Crandell arrives. He's played by John McMartin, and he asks to use Rebecca's photocopier in the office, and he goes in, and we cut to a little while later. Rebecca goes in to make sure everything's okay. And he asks her a bit of a strange question. He asks if there was a bit of a spark, if she felt a spark when he first came into the bar. And it's a very odd way of asking somebody if they want to date or if they want to, well, do anything else with them. And she said no. And he kept pushing her, and he eventually left after she demanded he leave, and there's a knock on the door, and obviously Rebecca thinks it's Dr. Crandell again, so she responds very exasperately, "I give up. You make me crazy with desire, and I can't keep my hands off you. What do you want?" And I think the obvious guess would be Sam coming in and taking advantage of the situation, but it wasn't. It was Woody, and he comes in and says, "Sign these invoices and then be gentle," which I thought was rather adorable. And Dr. Crandell comes back into the bar, and Sam asks why Rebecca is being quite rude to him and quite cold, and she tells Sam and Frasier what happened, and she basically says, well, she does say, "He asked about my feelings." Obviously, we, the viewer, can see that there's clearly something else there. He's not just asking about her feelings, because he was so pushy and insistent and quite frankly rude and inappropriate. And she's trying to convince Sam and Frasier that there was more to it than just asking her about her feelings. And she calls them Mr. Smarty Pantses. And I think that's the first time I've ever heard Mr. Smarty Pants being used as a plural, and I rather enjoyed it quite a lot. But they convince her this is his job. He's just asking questions because he's curious. And she finally agrees, okay, maybe that's all it was. She goes to apologise to him for being quite cold and abrasive. And he's sitting by the door, and he basically makes her say that he's an attractive person. Because he makes it seem like his feelings are wounded, because Rebecca's clearly repulsed by him, and no, he's attractive, she doesn't want him to feel bad, and then he starts rubbing his foot along her leg. He pretends he thought it was her table leg, or the table leg, and Rebecca responds to him, "You're still doing it, you have a hole in your sock," which made my skin crawl just a little bit. She stands up, she bangs her head on the light, and then Dr. Crandall's wife phones the bar, and Rebecca tells Sam and Frasier, "He towed my calf," which, there are sentences in Cheers that I would never expect to hear, and that's one of them, and I absolutely loved it. And obviously Rebecca's convinced that actually he is really sleazy, and she wants to convince Sam of this as well. We're then at a hotel with Dr. Crandell and a chambermaid, and there's a knock at the door, so the chambermaid, who is clearly there for a romantic evening with Dr. Crandell, has to hide in this closet. It's quite a big closet. It's a very nice hotel. And Rebecca comes in and asks for aspirin. It was a little bit peculiar. And while Dr. Crandell is getting aspirin, again, it's in a different room. It's quite a large hotel room, quite a large suite. Sam comes in, and Sam's muttering about how this is so stupid, to which Rebecca responds, "You do 9 stupid things before breakfast." Which I absolutely love. And Dr. Crandall's about to come back into the room, so Rebecca pushes Sam into the closet, not aware, of course, that the chambermaid is in there. And she eventually makes Dr. Crandall admit that he came onto her. He starts sing-songing it because she's so insistent. And as one could predict, Sam comes out of the closet with the chambermaid. Although that is quite a peculiar thought, that the chambermaid was in the closet, Sam went into the closet, and apparently they just started making out. 2 complete strangers. It's a very unusual situation. And they're all in this room, and there's a knock at the door again. And a violinist appeared. Dr. Crandall had ordered a violinist, I guess, to serenade the chambermaid. And then there's another knock at the door, and through the door, we hear his wife calling. How did she get the room number? I have to say, it's a very nice hotel. A hotel of that quality. I really feel I feel like any hotel, but certainly a hotel that has their guests' safety in mind should not be giving out room numbers. But nevertheless, let's overlook that. Everybody rushes off to the closet. Even the violinist just immediately scurries off as well. It's absolutely fabulous. And I think from that moment, probably from the point of the violinist scurrying off to the closet, I did not stop laughing. He manages to convince them to do this because he said, and I quote, "I've been faithful to this woman for 15 years, mostly because she's the scariest bitch you'd ever want to meet." I was quite surprised by the use of the word bitch there. I feel like in the 80s, or are we in the 90s now? Where are we? Season 7? No, we're still late 80s. I feel like that word wouldn't have been in... I mean, I'm wrong, clearly. But I was just surprised to hear that word. And it worked very well. It was very dramatic. And his wife comes in, and they're about to go out to eat. And she insists that he wears a coat so he doesn't get cold. So he goes to the closet, and he reaches in and grabs a coat. It's the chambermaid's coat. We know this because we saw her taking off her coat earlier on, and it doesn't fit. His wife is pretty confident something is going on, so she opens the closet door and demands they all come out. Well, she demands whoever is in there comes out. And Sam, Rebecca, the chambermaid, and the violinist all come filing out one at a time. It's just absolutely fantastic. Their expressions are incredible. They're like naughty children who have been just caught doing something they shouldn't be doing. And I absolutely love it. And she demands an explanation. And I have to say, Dr. Crandall's right. She is very, very scary. And Dr. Crandall looked terrifying. He looked like a child in that moment. He was so scared of the situation. Sam decides to say that they were all changing a light bulb, and Rebecca declares, as usual, I have to be the voice of reason. That is saying something, when Rebecca is the voice of reason, because she's generally quite unhinged. And, well, we get a clear example of this. She starts to explain what happened, that Dr. Crandell asked her about her feelings, and basically as she's explaining everything, it does sound quite strange. There's a chambermaid in his room. Well, yes, it's a hotel, and either his wife's not buying it, or she doesn't want to. I feel like the latter is probably more believable, that she just doesn't want to think of her husband as being unfaithful, so she's willing to accept that everything just sounds okay. There's an explanation for everything, and that's what she wants to believe. But that being said, Rebecca does start to lose it, and she calls... Dr. Crandall's wife calls Rebecca a tramp, and honestly, Kirstie Alley she's absolutely perfect, and her performance from that point to the end is amazing. She absolutely loses it. The violinist has to carry her out. She's gripping onto the sides of the door to try and get at Dr. Crandall's wife, and we end with Sam saying, "She just wanted to convince me that she's not crazy." Which is just absolutely fantastic. It's so wonderful. It's an absolutely amazing episode. I don't know if I can point to personal highlights. I guess Carla at the beginning Cliff's face when he lit up at Carla being all nice to him. Woody saying, sign these invoices and then be gentle. I rather liked that. The use of Mr. Smarty Pantses I liked. The way I felt, well, I didn't like the way I felt, but it was very powerful when Rebecca said, you're still doing it, you have a hole in your sock. Ugh. Rebecca hitting her head off of the light, really great performance. The sentence, he told my calf, and also the sentence, you do 9 stupid things before breakfast. Everybody filing out of the cupboard, the closet, one by one, and of course Kirstie Alley's performance right at the end, and ending with Sam saying, she just wanted to convince me that she's not crazy. It's fabulous, it's perfect, the visiting Lecher is an absolute joy, and needless to say, it's a pretty fantastic episode of Cheers.